And a Seifert fiber space is also just built out of gluing solid toroid together along their boundaries, but you're allowed slightly more flexibility in how you do it. Now, I think given time I probably shouldn't say any more than that, but it's very simple to describe and analyze quite a lot of detail. So, you know. Okay, so there are some examples of free manifolds. Now we can start thinking about whether the situation for free manifolds can be anything like this. So let's start asking some questions. Well, actually, before I ask a question, it's very nice to introduce some terminology which Thurston introduced, which is, in each of these cases, we see that this surface has this very special metric, which locally makes it isometric to either the two-sphere, the Euclidean plane, or hyperbolic plane. So I just want to introduce this terminology for that. So S2, oh, say PP. There's a geometric structure. Yeah. It's a geometric structure modeled on S2. That's the phrase that I want to introduce. So the projective plane and, of course, the two-sphere have geometric structures modeled on the two-sphere. That meant to incorporate, you take S2 the standard metric, you take the quotient by group isometries, then you get this. These two have geometric structures modeled on the Euclidean plane, these have geometric structures modeled on the hyperbolic plane. So now you can formulate the question. So here's the question. So does if we close three manifold submit the geometric structure modeled on one of free-sphere Euclidean free space, hyperbolic free space? If that was true, then of course the situation would be exactly analogous to what happens in dimension 2. Now it's very easy to see the answer certainly no. For a very simple reason. Having a geometric structure modeled on something means that the universal covering of the manifold has to be this. Now this is the free sphere. These two are both homeomorphic to Euclidean free space. So I just need to point out that this one has the wrong universal covering. And S2 cross R is not even homeomorphic to any of those. So that's that. Well, this is where you have to expand your ideas a bit. This is a perfectly nice, has a perfectly nice metric on it. It's a product manifold. The two-sphere has a very nice metric we've just been talking about. The real line is, well, it's the real line. And the product has a very nice product metric. So this suggests, obviously, we just expand our ideas a bit and allow more manifolds, or model manifolds, other than just these three constant curvature ones. Notice something special. The free sphere, like the two-sphere, is homogeneous. I can't draw a picture of the free sphere. Here's a picture of the two-sphere. The two-sphere is the same at every point. I can take any point and by a rotation send it some other point. Not only that, if I pick a direction at the point x and a direction at the point y, I can find a rotation of the sphere which sends x to y and sends that direction to that direction. So not only homogeneous on points, it's homogeneous on directions. That's not true for this manifold. It is homogeneous on points. I can send any point to any other point, but you can see it's kind of obvious that there's a special direction. If you stand in this manifold at any point, there's this line factor. And any isometry of this space has to send a line factor to the line factors. This is fairly obvious. It's true too. So this has a very nice metric, but it's a more general type than this. These are constant curvature, which means they're very homogeneous spaces. This is not, it's homogeneous, but not on directions. So what kind of metric do you get here? Well, actually, it's still, if you give this the product metric, it's still going to have a homogeneous metric. But it turns out what you should look for is, so we expand our ideas. So we can consider locally homogeneous metrics. We'll close 3 metrics. What's a locally homogeneous metric? It's a metric such that you've got this big manifold. I take some point, x, and some other point, y. I'm not assuming there's an isometry at n that sends x to y. But there is, given the point x, there's a neighborhood u, and given the point y, find the neighborhood v, there's an isometry from ux to dy. I haven't written down the logic of the statement. Given any pair of points, there exist neighborhoods u and v such that there's an isometry from u to v that sends x to y. So that's locally homogeneous. And if you have such a thing, it turns out universal covering is always going to have a homogeneous metric. So the universal covering is actually going to have this property that any point looks like any other point, but maybe not on direction. So what Thurston did, he kind of classified these things up to an equivalence relation, which I shan't really spell out, and that was what the 8 geometries were. So there exist 8 relevant. So what are we doing? We're looking at a simply connected manifold with homogeneous metrics, some equivalence relation. What makes a geometry relevant? Well, it turns out there are geometries you can have in which no closed manifold can ever be covered by one of them. So relevant means, in fact, that it's possible to get a closed manifold with this geometric structure. Then there are only 8.